So, building a flywheel with an IT leadership team, using the Fester sensitivity model to improve, this is how it says in the agenda, IT application cost dynamics, and actually also to build organizational momentum. This is what I want to talk about today. My name is Andrea Weierich. I work as the Chief Information Officer of my organization, who is a large insurance broker in Germany for institutions. I've been in IT all my professional life, and this presentation is based on work in the last 10 years that I've done applying systems thinking types of approaches in my leadership practice, both in a large corporate organization and in some years in Amazon Web Services, and this combines actually in this presentation. Why does IT need momentum? IT functions are usually under cost pressure, service pressure, and have complexity to deal with, and this makes IT leadership difficult. At the same time, you need, there is the magic of when systems thinking really works in an organization, that you build self-organizing teams, which makes leadership a lot more fun, and teams can be focused and efficient at the same time. So that's the goal. So when researching for this article, I was also like, you know, where does this flywheel thing actually come from? And it's actually rooted in engineering practices and a very physical concept. So for those of you who want to link back to that, there is examples of how that is used in machinery. So, but what does that mean in organizations? You can reapply this idea to organizations. And the first person that actually used the word was Jim Collins in a book that you can also find on the table. Lucy Lowe actually had that in her library. And he says that, you know, small, consistent efforts build momentum, and then you have self-reinforcing cycles and things work in a direction like magic. And positive feedback loops drive growth and performance. And the one organization that is testament to this working is actually Amazon themselves, who Jim Collins consulted with at the time when they were almost dead. And you might have seen this picture. This is basically the mental model that Amazon is based on. Ever since that crisis in 2001. And it centers around, you know, how do we create growth? Lower cost structures bring lower prices, which improves customer experience. With better customer experience, you increase traffic. This attracts more sellers, which increases your selection, which is attractive to customers. And you have this reinforcing flywheel that really drives growth to where this organization now is 1.5 million people and working across, using this mental model. So when I was at Amazon, I was expecting this organization actually, which is, I mean, they're quite systemic in their approaches without saying it like that or expressing it this way. I was looking if they had a mechanism or method to actually do stuff like that. So I was looking for that, and the interesting thing is, no, they don't. And there are very unsorted attempts to actually reapply this big retail flywheel to other businesses. But it lacks coherence and reasoning and why this should work. So, and then I remembered a time that I used a methodology and to actually build something similar, and then I was connecting those two things. So teams that are curious to build a flywheel lack a method to actually achieve that with some grounding and rational principles. And how do we identify those variables, and how do we know it's the right number and the right reinforcing variables? And how do you design the connections between those variables? How do you go about that? So it turns out there is actually a person, and it was interesting for me to attend this conference. I actually have to admit, I never heard of Checkland before in my whole life. So you might have not heard about a very important systems thinker called Weierich. He developed what he called the sensitivity model, and there is actually an English translation out of the major book that describes this whole approach. And it's a structured systems method for complex environment, and it allows teams to build models with feedback loops. And the interesting thing is, and this is for me in my leadership practice, what is important is it allows teams to build a same shared mental model, which is one of the key levers actually to drive cohesive action together. And this is where I have applied that in various contexts. And now I'm going to take you through one example and the types of outputs that you have using this methodology. It all starts with a good question. And that's actually one part, an important part of this process is actually what kind of question does this team want to answer? And it is very important to spend some time to actually find the right question where you want to put energy into. This team at that time come to the agreement that this was our key question. What influences the cost of our IT applications? So it's an IT team responsible for IT services, and this was the key question. What you do then is, in various workshop formats, to come to a set of variables that influence and contribute to answering this question. So you have the most important variable that you're driving for as your first one, which was the cost of an IT application. And then this team came up with various variables that came up to this number 15. And what Fester's method allows you to do is to check for completeness and cohesiveness with a method that he's proposing and explaining. And that's what we did. So it allows you to, when you follow this methodology, you know that you have a complete set and the system is represented as a whole. So these were the 15 variables that we came up with, and we had a shared understanding what each of those variables meant to each other. So we were going through in debates to explain each other what we meant, and this was what we ended up with. And what you do then is, the interesting bits is, how do these things connect? And how do they influence each other? And what you end up doing then is, you create a so-called influence matrix. So it's one variable versus the other, and then you assign values to the connection. So either there is no connection, or there is a linear, same relationship, or one variable influences the other over proportionally. So those are the values that you assign, and you go through each of those two sets of variables, and you end up with this grid in a structured discussion. What is influencing what? What you can do then with this grid, you can display the location of those variables and make that transparent. So if you translate this picture into the next view, you see how those variables are located in comparison to each other. And the interesting piece is what you see here highlighted in green, those are variables that actually are under the influence of this leadership team, where other variables are actually resulting in feedback loops or variables that you cannot directly influence, only indirectly influence. So the nice thing that comes out of this shared mental model is that you understand as a leadership team which are the things that we should put energy on, and this is where you then focus your work. And you leave other things outside, and you come as a leadership team to this agreement. And that's immensely valuable. And what you can do then is you can actually then abstract the whole thing if you would like to, and create a flywheel representation of this system, knowing that you've checked everything for completeness and you zoom out one more step. And this is how you could say that. So in this specific team, we had, what is influencing the cost of our IT application? We had our internal financial processes that were driving it. This was driving how engaged people were working together. Good management practices drive how people engage with each other. They drive financial processes. And you had standardization and skill management as variables that were important. And so we had focused actions and projects applying to those variables in full agreement across the whole leadership team. And we had a shared learning journey, a shared mental model, and eventually also success in execution, which proved us right that the measures that we were taking were actually really having a positive influence on the cost of the application services that we were responsible for. If you want to learn more about this method, there is a key person who's worked with Frederick Fester for all of her life and who is still consulting in this area, and her name is Gabriele Hara-Puchner. And she's the one that has been teaching and educating the world about this method in a long time. And what we've been doing also, she and a colleague of her are preparing a book to honor Frederick Fester and his work, which will come out later this year. And this presentation is captured in an article in this book, which will be forthcoming in the end of this year. And you may wonder, in the end, why I chose to use sunflowers as a representation. So if you remember one thing about the flywheels, right? Think about sunflowers as a very systemic view of or representation of a natural system that is organically growing. Worked for me. I'm in the process of reapplying that now in my current role, and looking forward to designing the next flywheel with my current team. Thank you.